So I want to start by first defining the problem. Whoever would like to start on the panel, I want to know, what do you think the lack of standardization in single use creates the most operational risk, or where do you think the lack of standardization creates the most interoperational risk and inefficiency?
I think I have to defer to the end users, and then I will contradict them. But yeah, please, Mark or Frank.
That's how we're going to do it. Yeah, Tyler asked us the hardest question first. No, thank you.
No
yeah,
pressure.
It's just in a nutshell, the idea of single use is that it's flexible, that it allows you to manage your business more nimbly. If you don't standardize, and we'll get into this in some more detail, you risk not having the materials to run a batch, to do a development work, and so on, and you lose all the flexibility that you thought you were going to get. So by being too cute and too complicated, you can turn the tables on yourself, so to speak. I don't know, Frank.
Yeah, I agree. Lead time on these is pretty tremendous due to the design process, and then the manufacturer of the single use they have to procure everything, particularly if there are specific needs. And then, once all of that is in-house for their facilities, it's got to get sent out. So it's a long process. And if at any of that point something goes wrong with any single piece, then the end user is left kind of scrambling a little bit.
Yeah, I think.
You want to push back?
No, I would only add to the conversation, of course. No, I was thinking that we do need to first spend a little bit of time talking about what do we mean by when we say standardization, because I come at it from a little different angle. I think interoperability requirements is a symptom, right? What I see is in my work is the lack of standards creates the need for depth of expertise among the implementers and users. That it's not just limited like a capital purchase. You could have a heavy bolus of expertise bringing a piece of equipment in, multi-use piece of equipment in, and then those resources sort of are less intense over the lifetime of that piece of equipment. Whereas with single-use technology, yeah, you need that expertise up front, but then it has more of a lifetime requirement for managing, if there's an investigation, you need to have that expertise in the single-use technology itself. And so if you had really robust standards where you say, I buy design or quality level A, and everyone uses the same vocabulary to describe that and knows how to achieve it and everything else, your demand for that depth of expertise and understanding about all the how and why and everything else underneath would be mitigated. Because these standards don't exist, I think it places a pretty heavy demand. And we've been trying to solve this to some extent within the ASME PPE. And one of the ways, there's 3 topics that we've got questionnaires created for, which gives the end user the questions to ask, because sometimes they don't even know. So on particulates, on sterility, and on engagement qualification, some people don't realize that there are no standards, so they can just buy it and it's going to perform the same from 2 different suppliers. There's a lot of nuance in the actual execution, and it's hard to write standards when there's a lot of legacy decisions have been made and you can't legislate one way is the right way. So at least informing the conversation has been our effort to date.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That bit about expertise makes sense. If every system is so specified and so bespoke, so to speak, then it stands to reason that you'd have to deal with a lot of different experts. You can't just pull in somebody off the street that calls himself a single-use expert if they're not trained on this specific system. So do you think there's been an effort, like any progress made on that front of trying to de-silo this very specific design model, or?
I see it from my side that the motivations at the time when the decision is made to do a design are often not the same motivations as for long-term usage, right? And now I'm looking at Mark here because he used to work at Merck, and they had a robust single-use network, which was a global community of practice where they tried to establish best practices across a very large organization to avoid that problem. But, it happens, and we see it all the time, right? The motivations of a small clinical company is to get to the next round of data, not to worry about making drug product 10 years from now. And so they may do some decisions that are not great for the long haul, but they serve them very, very well today. And so I think that, the existence of standards, the way I think this audience is talking about them, could facilitate that, right? You buy a standard design, but the foundation to get to interoperable standard designs hasn't even been built yet. And that's the standards world I live in, where we need to standardize what is an engagement qualification? How do you deal with particulates? What is the extractables? I think are pretty well handled, but integrity, sterility, these are not as uniform as one might think.
Mark, Frank, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think what Paul's opened up here is something that we used to hear all the time in meetings, which is, what do you mean by standard? Standard for what?
Capital S or little s.
Yeah, standards in what something looks like, standards in how something operates, standards in how you test it, standards for the materials that are used underneath. All of those are important, and the thing that I've tried to do or tried to do in the past to simplify the discussion a little bit is to simplify the subject, and to tell my customers who were process engineers or process designers that there were certain things where creativity was well applied, and there were other things where creativity should be set aside. So a length of tubing with 2 connectors on it so I can stretch between 2 points in a factory. Why do we have so many designs for that? Or let's get a little more complicated. 2 lengths of tubing on a filter. Factory A uses 18 inches. Factory B uses half a meter. Factory C, and same filter, same connectors, but now you've got this multiplicity of part numbers that makes managing the whole thing very difficult. It's probably coming from different suppliers, so the engagement, the connection testing that Paul talked about becomes more difficult. All of that has to be maintained, and it takes creative energy away from where it needs to be applied.